What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a call from Skeptic Haven. If you would like to, please go down below in the description and follow Skeptic Haven. If you love call-in shows, that is another great place to consume this kind of content. On today's call, I'm with Secular Rarity, and we are speaking with Batar. Batar wants to talk about the fine-tuning argument for God's existence. Batar seems to think that the life-permitting conditions of our universe make more sense under the idea that God exists rather than he doesn't, and that it's just naturally this way. He attempts to invoke Bayesian probability in order to make his case. Secular Rarity and I push back on his statements about Bayesian probability as it concerns the fine-tuning argument, because he seems to be inserting some kind of supernatural element, like a wizard, into the mix when it just doesn't need to be there. So if you want to fuck around and find out how the fine-tuning argument for God makes more sense under a God belief than a naturalistic belief, then please stay tuned.
We are going out to California. We are going to talk with Batar. He, him, is a theist. Did I say that right, Batar?
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, awesome. Well, you were chatting with Godless Engineer and Secular Rarity. What's up, man? What you got?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I'm just curious, like, what the reply is supposed to be to the Bayesian fine-tuning argument, right? Because I take it to be the sort of powerful argument, right, in showing that theism is true. And I'm not really, like, convinced by any of the atheist replies, right? And if you need me to, I could just outline what the argument exactly is, right?
Are you saying the fine-tuning? Hang on, real quick, Batar. Are you saying the fine-tuning argument?
No, so I'm talking about the Bayesian variant of the fine-tuning argument, right? Because there's deductive versions that people like Craig will offer, right?
Sure.
That I won't accept.
Okay, go for it. Give us the Bayesian. Go ahead. I know what I'm going to say probably at the end of it, but go ahead. I mean, give it to us.
Yeah, I mean, look, first, it's probably helpful, right, to just define what Bayes' theorem is, right? It's just that the probability of A given B is equal to the probability of B given A times the probability of A divided by the probability of B, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's understood, right, what will follow from that, right, is kind of a basic point, right, with respect to evidence, right? So if we have in the background, right, that if E is more probable on H1 than H2, then E supports H1 over H2, then what the theist would have to show, right, for life-permitting conditions to be evidence for theism, right? It's just that the presence of life-permitting conditions is more probable on theism than it is on naturalism.
Right. If I cut in
an argument,
Batar real quick, just because I want to make sure that we don't go so high level or so nuanced that we lose everybody. I'll let you know exactly where I come from, which is this, like, Bayesian analysis isn't exactly the thing that I spend all my time doing. I've listened to many of folk talk about it. I would say GE actually has a little bit more understanding of Bayes. I feel like that's pretty important when it comes to mythicism and Dr. Carrier's work and stuff. So I'm pretty sure that he comes to a slightly different conclusion there. And I guess what I'm going to poke at is this. Is why does GE using that analysis, why does he come to a radically different conclusion than you?
I can tell you.
Yeah, because as I said, right, it doesn't follow from the correctness alone of the sort of, Bayesian analysis of probability, right, that theism is true. What I did say specifically, right, which maybe wasn't picked up, is that you have to think that the probability, right, of life-permitting conditions given theism is higher than the probability of life-permitting conditions given naturalism, right? And so if that's true, then the life-permitting conditions favor theism over naturalism, right? With the trivial point I made about evidence in mind, right?
Well, now, yeah, sure, but if I can interrupt here, I mean, you can literally make any proposition more likely as long as you insert a magical wizard.
That's where I was going to say from the beginning.
Yeah, but
so no. Hold on. Because like I can say, one second. Hold on. Let me just flesh this out, okay? So I can say like a Godzilla walking around Palestine in the 1st century is far more likely, if a magical wizard conjured him there than on any kind of naturalistic sort of perspective, right? Or you know, you could say that, oh, you know, if a magical wizard exists and, you know, wanted to, then you know, it could snow in Palestine. Let's take it out of the realm of like ridiculous like Godzilla stuff, and let's make it a little bit more reasonable, because, you know, this year, where was it in the Middle East that got snow for the first time? So it's very likely, yeah, it's very likely that snow could happen there. And it's far more likely if you have a magical wizard conjuring snow than for a natural situation, right? Would you agree to that?
You're right. So that's just nothing. A trivial point, which is that you can build it into a hypothesis that there's this expectation, right? But the problem is,
totally. So
you agree with GE?
Yeah, so I mean, you think that the fine-tuning argument, inserting a magical wizard in order to make more sense, does not actually make sense, right?
Well, no, so that's a blunder there, right? Because it doesn't follow, right, from me thinking there's lower priors in the wizard case that I think that there's lower priors in the theism case, right? I'm indifferent between theism.
Why? What's the difference on the lower priors? Like all religious people are doing, religious apologists are doing. Hold on, all religious apologists are doing are positing a supernatural wizard that exists outside of time and space, whereas I'm positing a very real wizard based inside time and space that is conjuring the precipitation at that point. So like,
that seems
if you I mean, if you really want to think about it, like a human wizard conjuring snow in Palestine in the 1st century CE is far more likely than God doing it.
Yeah, humans exist. We know things operate on the constraints of time and space. We've never got any demonstration of anything that's outside time and space. So,
yeah, we can move to that little point afterwards. But I just want to note, you asked me, what is the difference? What I said is that I used the principle of indifference. I don't know, how exactly you got that question out there. But yeah, as for the point.
So wait. Stop. I'm an idiot. Stop. Batar, I'll mute you. I can just do it. Like, you probably heard a beep right there. Okay. I'm gonna click the button again and it's gonna unmute you. But I know, because you're a decent human being, you're gonna let me finish my point here in just a second. Okay. So you probably hear that beep again. You're unmuted, but you're gonna wait just a second because you're a good person. Hey, Batar, I'm kind of an idiot. I don't really understand this Bayes theorem analyses. I don't really get it. It sounded to me just a second ago when GE said, like, hey, you posit a supernatural wizard and I posit a wizard that is constrained by the laws of time and space and physics and stuff. You said it sounded to me like you said there's no difference between those things. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, no, so that wasn't the point, right?
Right, I know, I'm an idiot. No, Batar, I'm an idiot. You can help me. You have an opportunity here to teach me.
Yeah,
so I'm genuinely confused here, because it sounded to me almost like you said there's no difference between GE's wizard and your wizard. And if I've got that wrong, explain it.
That's actually not what I said. That's not what I said. So what I said is that I applied the principle of indifference between theism and naturalism. That's not to say that the wizard hypothesis, right, is no different from the God hypothesis. That'll just be to misunderstand what indifference is.
Awesome. I think I understand now, but the problem is, if I'm understanding correctly, you didn't answer GE's question and you just moved on to something different. And I'd love for you to go answer that, because I think that's kind of important.
Well, he asked the question, what is the difference? And by the way, that question actually came after my explication of the difference, right? Which is just that one hypothesis has lower priors by virtue of its specificity, right? Where I take perfect being theism to be quite a simple hypothesis, right, in the Swinburnian sense, right? So I think there's a symmetry breaker, right, with respect to there being that property in one case and not another.
The entire argument rests on a big if, and that's if a God exists. So if you want to take the whole magical wizard part out of it, that's fine. I feel like I feel like God is a wizard in this respect, but
what do you think?
So, like, if just positing a God, saying, "Well, if a God exists, then it makes more sense."
Which just really quickly, you said that it relies on if, which is that this God exists. But in the argument I provided, there actually was no conditional, or the antecedent of the conditional was God exists. So kind of another blunder on your end, right? That's not a commitment to the argument.
I'm not blundering anything. You're coming to a conclusion based on a specious argument that God exists.
Yeah.
Like your argument automatically assumes that God exists and
Right.
says that it's more likely on the naturalistic, versus a naturalistic perspective. So like your particular argument is already suffering from, the ad hoc nature of it.
Right. See, that's what I was feeling. It sounded to me like what your objection was earlier, GE. And tell me if I'm just not, because again, I'm happy to admit that y'all are smarter than me. That doesn't really bother me. I'll sleep fine tonight, I promise. Y'all know more about this. So I'm just trying to learn, okay? But it sounded to me like what you were saying a minute ago, John, was essentially something in the vein of like, yeah, man, but if one of your prior probabilities to get to this conclusion is just already accepting that there's this magical wizard that can do anything, well, of course we get there, and we just that's not a viable method to reaching conclusions. And then that was where we got into the whole like, you have a wizard that's outside of space and time, and John and I have a wizard that's inside space and time thing. Am I tracking that at the very least, man? Am I sort of on the right page?
No, you actually aren't, and I don't think my reply to Godless there. There should have really been paywalled behind your monologue, right? So to be clear, right, Godless.
I'm sorry, just for a second there, I wasn't sure if this was your show or my show. Oh, that's right. You can't fucking respond because you're muted right now. So go ahead and get all uppity. Ride in on whatever tall horse you want to, Batar. We got all the fucking control. You can just look like a dumb little idiot just sitting there fuming and stamping your little feet if you want, or you can be a decent person and have a conversation with us. I'm happy that I'm an idiot. I'm perfectly fine with that. I already agreed to that, man. You don't have to keep trying to get little digs in every now and then. Just explain yourself. Answer the question directly. You absolutely refused, based on your own admission earlier, to answer GE's very simple question. Now, we moved on. I'm cool with that. But I would love for you to just explain. You're going to have the time. You're going to have the floor. I'm going to unmute you here in just a second. If you get a little attitude again, like a child, I'm okay with just leaving you on mute and seeing how long you can hold. It's fun for me. So here you go. You got the time. Go ahead.
I mean, just relax, right? I don't think I'm going as uppity, right? Because you just kind of went on this monologue, right?
Oh no. You got muted again. It's crazy. Oh no. All the things you wanted to say, you'd prepared for them. You're so excited. You're a big boy now. Hey man, just talk to us. Just talk to us. You're going to come back on in a second. Just be an adult. You can do it. I feel confident. I feel really confident. Okay? You ready? You're going to hear a beep. Go ahead.
We can just call that.
I'm an idiot. Batar. I'm an idiot. Explain it to me. Help me out, okay? Help me out.
Yeah,
Help me understand.
Are we headed for breakdown number 4? Yeah, so now that breakdown number 4 is over, right? I gave a very basic explanation of Bayes' theorem, right? Now, if you didn't track such an explanation, I just take that to be a problem on your end. But now, you said that GE understands, right, what Bayes' theorem is. But there's a little problem there, right, which is that you didn't understand basic points about priors, right, and then made the whole blunder with the wizard case, right? And then to kind of rescue your friend.
No. Hold on. I'm so sorry. You're shit talking me, and so I feel the need to respond real quick. So one thing if you really want to go through an in-depth explanation of how you fucked up, so you went through this entire explanation where you just laid out some kind of English language explanation of Bayes' theorem, and then just postulated that these things hold certain priors, but you didn't actually justify your priors. What's your justification for God existing, for one, that makes that prior probability more likely than just natural shit existing? That's your main problem, and that's where we've been trying to point out to you that you have a problem, is that your entire argument relies on this prior probability of God existing, because that's what the argument actually relies on. So can you please give us this prior probability? Give us a number. Pull a number out of your asshole. Ooh. I don't care. That is going to illuminate where you're fucking up at.
I mean, so there's a little error there, which is you said I gave some like English language explanation of Bayes' theorem, but I actually gave a mathematical explanation. Right now,
There
in
was no
English
English,
math in
language.
that. You did not
It
give us
sounded
any
like
kind
you,
of
yeah,
numbers. You didn't.
yeah,
You just
yeah.
described something
Sounded
as being more likely.
Yeah, it sounded like you used the English language, but I would say that it's particularly hilarious to me, Batar, that in an opportunity to actually respond with anything meaningful, you purposefully chose not to. I just think that's fascinating. Look, I'm the dipshit of this conversation. Out of the three of us, I'm the least intelligent, but I've been tracking the whole fucking time, and apparently you haven't. And that's hilarious to me. So once again, Batar, here we go. Here's your opportunity. I'm an idiot. GE actually has some knowledge on this, it sounds like. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's also an idiot. Hey, I don't know. Convince me. He said, it sounded like, tell me if I'm wrong, GE. It sounded like what you were saying is there's a problem with one of the things that you're using in your calculation to get to the conclusion about like God existing, and that thing is the likelihood of God existing to begin with. So provide us some information to accept that it's that high of a likelihood. Am I tracking?
Yes.
Awesome, Batar. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so there's this kind of basic thing that could have been inferred, which is that I said I'm indifferent, which just means that I think there's a prior probability of 0.5. Right now, the fact that there had to be some question.
The reason I muted you is because as an idiot in this conversation, I feel like you responding with, yeah, it could go fucking either way, doesn't really indicate that there is a higher likelihood that that thing should be utilized in this equation. GE, help me. It sounded like what he said, it's a 50-50, straight up and down, so it literally could go either way.
Yeah, and I feel like that is an extremely liberal estimate, like on the religious person's part, like on the a deity creating everything and like fine-tuning everything and whatnot. Because if we think about it, if we consider all of the natural phenomena that we've attributed to God and then later reversed and said, oh no, it was actually this natural thing, this natural phenomena that we've been able to explain and understand. Like you can point to anything, lightning, tectonic plate shifting, like all of that has natural explanations. That means that a natural explanation for like the universe existing, why the properties are the way that they are, naturally have a higher likelihood than magical supernatural magician that exists outside of space and time, right? So like if just doing the mental math on it, like not even literal math, but just the mental, like working through like the prior probabilities of both, what you would need in this situation is massive amounts of evidence to overcome the prior of the magical magician that exists outside of reality, because that's going to be incredibly low because nothing that we have has been able to explain it. But if you're saying that the natural, like fine-tuned properties of this universe are explained better under that, then you would need a massively strong amount of evidence to overcome the prior probability. That's what you need.
So if I'm tracking, what you're saying is provide even one example where we thought something was a natural process or a natural explanation, but actually had an explanation that was God. Is that like
yeah, the explanation? Yeah, the explanation is better on a God explanation than a natural one.
Okay. I am with training wheels on this, Batar. Okay. You have to help me. I am like a 5-year-old here. Help me understand this. I got you back on. Where is GE wrong?
On my wrist because you went on for about 3 minutes there. Yeah, I mean.
Hey, Batar. Hey, man. Let me ask you a question. Do you know where the fuck you are? It's not a Wendy's. You're on a call-in show. You can talk to us if you want. you can also just hang the fuck up and go do whatever you want to do with your life. I didn't know you existed until about 18 minutes and 10 seconds ago. You know how I know that? Because the program that you called in on tracks the length of the call. If you're going to explain to us how call-in shows work, honestly, I'm just going to go back to asking GE questions about mythicism because I find that really interesting. And I don't know where I fall on that. I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to see if I can piss off an atheist or two in the process, okay? I think you're a real person. I really do. I feel really confident that you can have a conversation with us. It sounded to me like what GE was saying a minute ago was something along the lines of, hey, man, we've got all this prior evidence that seems to indicate natural. Never once have we gotten this information that indicates non-natural, which would be necessary to conclude that the probability that God's a thing and can do all this Jesus-y stuff and make the world and whatnot, that's going to make that lower, right? We need something. Help us out here, Batar. Help me understand this, okay? I'm going to bring you back on. I want to talk with you, genuinely. Okay. I have these conversations on a regular basis in my local area, but apparently you are having massive difficulty with the absolute basics of being an adult. Now, if you aren't 18, Batar, you just tell us right now, because I ain't going to talk to a fucking child, but I feel like you're an adult, so let's have a conversation. Help me understand where GE is wrong with what he just said. I know it was a lot. If you need a quick recap, I bet you he could do it in like 30 seconds. Do you want a recap or do you want to just respond and help me?
Yeah, I guess I'll respond, but I do think it's quite strange how the self-proclaimed atheist is getting 90% of the talking time. Right, and these kinds of monologues there. But
I don't think you really understand how call-in shows work, man. You're given an opportunity to speak, so speak. If you're just going to call in and say, like, man, it's crazy that most of this show is not me talking. Yeah, dude, figure out how industry works. I'm sorry that you haven't figured out radio. I want to say we got that way a while ago, man. So come on, be an adult. You can do this. I feel very confident in you. Explain to me what GE was wrong about. It sounds to me like what he said made sense.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the, 1 minute there, a little paywall right behind replying to what was said. Now, as for the problem with GE's view, right, what I said is that the prior distribution is even. Now, it's not going to follow that the probabilities are even, right, because there's probabilities that aren't prior probabilities, right, and there's also updated priors. So it could be that the sort of evidence of fine-tuning, which is just what the argument appeals to, right, is going to favor, the theist hypothesis over the naturalist hypothesis. And then, what was said further is that there has to be some evidence that's quote-unquote overwhelming. But recall, if we're assuming indifference between the two hypotheses, which, as I said, I take to be pretty well motivated, right, especially if you come from an objective Bayesian ilk, right, is, it doesn't have to be that strong, really. It just has to be, but, even so, it's still true that the fine-tuning...
Have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart, Batar? Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, the one and only Son of God the Father Almighty, into your heart? Answer me honestly, because he'll know if you're lying. Have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart?
Yeah, I'm not a Christian, no. I'm giving a case for theism. I don't know what you're on about.
Awesome. Then you'll burn in hell with the rest of us. Absolutely worthless. You got an opportunity to respond directly. And GE, did he say anything? Did he say anything that seemed to address that?
No, I didn't hear any kind of evidence. I just heard a lot of bitching about my requirements for his evidence. So like, I didn't hear anything compelling. No.
Ugh, my God. Hey, look, man, I'm glad, Batar, Batar, that your God doesn't torture people for all eternity, although maybe he does if he's not the Christian God, maybe not. I'm glad you don't have to worry about that, man, because if you were a follower of Christ, I'm going to be honest with you, I'd have laughed in your fucking face. I'd have laughed in your face. This is what brings you to your belief in God. You can't even respond to a direct question. GE asked for one little bit, anything whatsoever, where after scrutinizing, investigating, double freaking fucking checking everything, god damn it, never once has it come to anything other than, oh yeah, man, it's his natural thing. Just anything, bro. That was the question. You had all this time and you did nothing. I'm glad you're not a Christian, man, because the Bible says that you'd be cast aside as a fucking goat who never knew Jesus, and you'd be tortured in hell. I don't think that's real. Good news for you, good news for me. But man, what a belief. What a belief, man. I hope your God doesn't actually give a shit if you fight for him or anything. Fucking hell. Do you want to keep talking, GE? I mean, he's still technically on the line. I don't know. He hasn't said anything for a minute. You want to keep talking?
I'll leave that up to you.
Well, am I muted? I mean, I just assume I'm muted during the monologues.
No, you've been live. You can hear a beep. I know you can, and I know you know that because I've been on the call side of it. So I know you're faking when you just said that. See, watch this, watch it. Oh, you just heard the beep, and I know you know that that's true. I muted you. Man, look. I don't think you're ready for these conversations. I'm just going to be honest. And that's a shitty thing for me to say. That's bad. I shouldn't say that to you, Batar. Again, I think you're probably an intelligent, compassionate human being who does good things in your daily life. I don't think you've really thought about this shit well enough. Because as a dipshit, as somebody that really, honestly, you guys, I did calculus quite a long time ago, and I sure don't remember any fucking shit about it at all. Okay? Derivatives are cool, but I don't know how to do them. And I'm telling you, man, even I'm tracking this conversation, and I'm sitting over here going, hey, Batar, I don't think you've responded to this at all. So I don't know where else to go, man. I'm just going to be real. I don't know where else to go with this. GE, do you have any other thoughts? I mean, I know it's I feel like
I feel like a lot of people misunderstand the usefulness of Bayes' theorem and how that can be used like for different arguments. And I feel like, as I've shown here, if anybody comes at you with Bayes' theorem proving something about God, like, the fine tuning of the universe and all this other stuff, you have to understand that they're working off of a prior probability, and that's going to speak volumes to, analyzing the evidence. Because in order for him to come to the conclusion that, it makes more sense on a God existing than not existing, you have to set your prior probability as well as the evidence to such a high degree that it overcomes the naturalistic perspective. And that's just, doing it in your head. Like, that's just saying, this, like, in a, do you know what Likert scales are?
I don't. No, please help me.
So you have you ever been through one of those forms where it's like, is this more likely, less likely, just as likely? Those are called Likert scales. And they're meant to judge like likelihoods and probabilities, right? So
makes sense.
Yeah, if you, in your mind, you can visualize those kind of scales for the evidence, right? What he's saying is that it's like the existence of God is 50-50, right? And between naturalistic explanations and God explanations, it's right there at 50-50. And that is an extreme over-exaggeration considering all of the evidence in our background information. That is where the argument fucks up. And the use of Bayes' theorem allows you to actually hone in on where the problem starts. This is the same thing as like when you start like a really complicated math problem. And I've had math problems that I've spent all weekend trying to do. If you fuck up in the very first steps of your problem, then you're going to get shit output. Right. This is the same thing for all of mathematics. So his problem starts at the very beginning and he ends up getting a shit output. And the same thing can be said for any of these kinds of arguments using Bayes. Bayes just allows you to identify where the fuck up is.
Okay. I think I am tracking, and I am excited because I love that moment when it is obvious that I don't fucking understand something. And then I start to have that the lifting of the fog moment. Okay. So what you're saying is not necessarily that utilizing Bayes' theorem gets us to a solid yes or no, more so that the process of using Bayes' theorem is to help you evaluate the assumptions that you're bringing into the equation that leads you to your conclusion. How justified am I to hold these assumptions?
Right. And it can give you a probabilistic sense of like how likely a conclusion is.
Okay.
And then from there you can make different, arguments
Yeah.
like for what I do with Jesus existing or not existing, like Bayes would seem to indicate that Jesus more likely than not didn't exist.
Sure.
But then I make my own considerations of the evidence that's provided. And in this particular situation, the fuck up is happening in the prior probability stage and not where we're even considering any kind of evidence.
Okay. Well, look, Batar, you're still on the line. I've had you muted the whole time, and I know you know that because you didn't hear a beep. I think the last few minutes that GE just laid out is easy to follow. I think the criticism that he is providing for what you've brought to us today is easy to follow. I fully believe that you can call me back with an answer to that, because I think you're a decent person. I really do. I think you're probably pretty intelligent, probably a fairly nice guy. Most people in your life probably enjoy when you're around. So I know that you can do this. I don't think you did a fantastic job tonight, but that's okay. I was also kind of a dick. And you know what? I'll take the opportunity just to say, I'm sorry, man. My bad. I was kind of a dick. Call me back, Batar. And when you call me back, I want you to say to the call screener, because, I mean, you don't have to. You do whatever the fuck you want with your life. But if you genuinely care about this, if this is actually something that interests you, I want you to listen to those last few minutes that GE was just explaining and call me back with an answer. And tell the call screener specifically, because I'm friends with the call screener. You can say to them, hey, SR called my ass out. I'm going to show him up. I want to talk about Bayes' theorem. We'll put you right at the top. I'm serious, man. I want to have this conversation. I learned something tonight, and I'm very, very excited by that. I want that to happen again. And if you're right, Batar, I want to fucking hear it. I don't want to be this dipshit believing that God's not real because I don't understand Bayes' theorem. I feel like I get it a bit more now. And I think I think GE has some good points there. So call me back. Call me back, man. Seriously. I mean it. You can find me all the places. John, too. We out there all the time. Neither of us are shying away from any of these discussions, man. We want to have this. If we are presented with something that adjusts our prior probability, we'll do that. I get a lot more of that, John. I get a lot more of that where it's like, hey, man, I have a problem with this specific thing right here. And the response is, well, I don't think you're paying attention to the thing I want you to pay attention to. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, maybe not, man. But help me out.
Yeah, I feel like that's the mark of somebody that doesn't fully understand like the argument that they're trying to make, and they just want people to believe what they're saying instead of actually trying to justify it. Because I mean, I get it that at first he was just kind of colloquially talking about it, and that's perfectly fine. But then we tried to get into the deeper nuances of Bayes' theorem and like how likely he thinks some things are. And that's where we were able to identify like, where the problem was. And that's in, stating that, God is equally as likely as existing as not.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is the biggest misstep in the calculation.
Right. And I think that's a really good. This is something that I've always really. I have a lot of teachers in my close family. I mean, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, all that shit, right? A lot of them, a lot of us are involved in education. One of the things I have thought is always at the pinnacle of education is the ability to take difficult concepts and break them down in a manner that the uneducated can understand. That's the whole point, right? And I felt like there was a moment there where he wanted to spit a lot of big words. He wanted to spit a lot of concepts. And then when I came in and I was like, hey man, look, I don't really look, John's tracking. Okay. He understands all those words. I need help with the definition on number 2. Okay. I didn't feel like I got a good breakdown. I didn't feel like I understood exactly. Like if somebody said to me, hey man, I don't understand how a car moves. Like I get that you turn the engine on and I get that it has wheels, but I don't really get how a car moves. I would go, oh yeah, I don't really get it either. But basically we take this liquid that has a lot of potential energy in it and we make a controlled explosion that causes these other levers and wheels to move and spin. And those are all connected to the wheels that then start to turn because of that pressure. Somebody could go, oh yeah, man, I guess I kind of get an internal combustion engine now, you know? So I guess what I'm getting at there is just that I get frustrated with people when I'm genuinely saying to someone like, I don't understand this. I'm happy to tell you that Bayes' theorem is not the thing that I deal with a lot of. Teleological argument, Kalam, Cosma, fuck it. Yeah, man, I'm with it. I'll talk to you for hours about that shit. Bayes' theorem, I'm going to be honest, man, that's not my strong suit. So when somebody responds to me in that conversation and isn't able to say like, yeah, here's the 5-year-old version of that, I feel like maybe you don't understand it as much as you think. You know, is that wrong? Am I assuming too much of people?
Well, no, I don't think you're assuming too much. I feel like it can illuminate either they don't really understand the argument or they're banking on your ignorance of the argument in order to convince you of their presentation of it. All right, that was kind of a crazy conversation. Now, if you want to, please go down below and let me know what you thought about the different topics that were brought up in this video. What do you think about all these flaws in the fine-tuning? Do you think that there's a real problem with just assuming God exists from the start? Do you think that there's like a big difference between wizards and these magical explanations that Vitar seems to be using? And finally, what do you think about the criterion of embarrassment as it concerns like the historical reliability of the New Testament? Let me know down below in the comments. And while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.